Previously, when it comes to Tomb Raider and DLCs, there hasn't really been much to talk about. Rise of the Tomb Raider only had the Baba Yaga DLC, and I think maybe one more that really wasn't worth mentioning. But I'm glad to say that this game is a complete turnaround. There are character moments, story details, and all types of content, from tombs to skills, gear, and etc. Buckle in, because I'm excited about this discussion. What's going on, YouTube? Pizzo back with another video. If you have not heard of me already, I do video game reviews on this channel and branching out to other things. So if that's something that you're interested in, please make sure that you hit the subscribe button and the notification bell so that you know when the next video goes live. And if at any given point in time you're enjoying the content, just drop a like on the video. Be greatly appreciated. Real quick, just to let you know, there are going to be spoilers in this. So if you have not watched the main game review, click in the top right corner right here and you should be good to go. Other than that, this video is long enough. Let's go ahead and get into everything. The Forge DLC picks up as soon as you make it to Paititi with a mission called Echoes of the Past that focuses on Abby's heritage and the history of ancient Kuwakyaku. The mission starts with Laura meeting Pilar, Abby's aunt, who explains that Mariana, Abby's granny, tasked her with giving Abby a map once she was ready. Obviously, since Pilar still has the map, she's unsure that Abby's ready for the implications. Laura's able to convince Pilar that Mariana thought that Abby was ready to discover the map's secrets, and after she explains that she's staying with Abby for the time being, she hands Laura the map so that they can try to discover the secrets together. Now Laura hits Abby up to try to talk about the map, but Abby wanted to talk about her homeboy.
A friend, huh? What's her name?
They get back on track and meet up at a man named Diego's house, where Laura explains to Abby that Mariana left a hidden message on the map as a gift to Abby. The hidden message leads them on a treasure hunt of sorts for 4 pieces of an Inca symbol. After everybody pitches in a little bit of context, Laura uses the symbol to pinpoint a hieroglyph in a spot on the map where Mariana used to tell Abby stories about a magical hidden place that existed centuries ago. This brings you to the tomb called Forge of Destiny, where Laura and Abby find out this hidden place was not only a forge, but the place where the ancient Mayan queen Abrane was buried. Once you're able to make it back, Pilar explains that Mariana was a guardian, the name given to the descendants of the ancient Mayan queen, which also means that Abby's a guardian too. And upon this realization, you leave Abby and Pilar to catch up and figure out what's next for Abby. The Pillar DLC picks up in Queen Unuratu's cave after saving Etzli. The Age of Makers mission included with this DLC starts with Koryanka, who we're just going to call Corey for short, arguing with a guy named Kumia about the existence of an artifact called the Shield of Age Makers. And they go back and forth until Corey decides she wants to end this man's whole career.
The only things we should trust in to defeat Kukulkan are our skills and our wits.
Well then, seeing as neither are your strong suit, I suggest you get back to your training.
Back to the point though, after some mutual respect, Corey begins to shed some light on the history of Paititi and Queen Unuratu. She explains that Queen Unuratu is the descendant of the first emperor of Paititi, Senchichika, and also the reason she was fussing about the shield in the first place is because she believes it shows Unuratu is the chosen one for carrying out the ritual of Kukulkan and leading them into the next age. And of course the stakes are risen because whoever finds this shield first will more than likely determine who the people of Paititi decide to support. So Laura decides to head through the path of Huracan to get to it first and help turn the tide in the rebellion's favor. After successfully stealing the shield from the cult of Kukulkan, Corey interprets the shield and finds out that anyone can participate in the ritual, which would defeat the purpose of the rebellion. Desperate and out of options, they result to the only thing that they can do to keep the rebellion's hope alive. Because are you really wrong if there's no proof otherwise?
Is that the shield? I don't even want to know why you're burning that. I'm just glad you made it back. Again.
Speaking of Jonah, the Nightmare DLC picks up after Laura makes it back with Jonah after being led to believe that Commander Rourke killed him. Laura joins in on Jonah and Uchu's convo and find out that they're exchanging scar stories, which is really convenient because, hey, the whole half of this man's head is scarred. And when it's his turn to share his story, he mentions having a run-in with a recipe called the White Breath.
If my recipes did that, I think I'd rather starve.
It is not that kind of recipe.
Now, like any sane person with half a face, he's adamant about not going back down the path of fear for it. But can you take a guess who is? Trust me, I know. I was shocked too. It's Laura. But it's always Laura. And with that being said, I'm just going to let this scene play out because I just don't know what is inviting about some random woman on her knees in the middle of the wilderness, but... This trip she ends up going on definitely gave me Baba Yaga DLC vibes. And just like any of her other run-ins with hallucinogens, we take a stroll down memory lane dealing with the death of her parents. Honestly, you would have thought she was Bruce Wayne with how many times we've had to circle back to her parents' death. I digress though. After a brief swimming sequence and a cameo from the Rise of the Tomb Raider's villain, she battles through a cave structure full of every enemy type that you bump into during the story. Now the trip ends with someone I call Darth Raider preying on her own biggest fears and regrets, from the death of the people in Cozumel to the fear of losing Jonah. Eventually Laura's able to fight back until she snaps out of it and has to cross the valley of the monkey guys to obtain the white breath. And finally, once she makes it back safe, Laura and Uchu come to an agreement that maybe Uchu's scar story is best left alone.
I don't really think there's anything to tell.
The Heart of the Serpent DLC picks up after you save Hakan from captivity in the upper city. At the start of the Two Graves mission, Hakan is apparently in some hot water with a man's sister after sending her brother, Aron, to snoop around the cult's temple and retrieve some sort of item. Now, he couldn't do it himself because being an escapee, there's a bounty on his head, plus he says he's trying to make the most of his second chance at life. Now, it's been a minute and Aron hasn't returned, so Laura takes it upon herself to put her cape back on and make sure he's good. While she's infiltrating the cult's temple, she sees Aron, but I swear as soon as that boy made eye contact with Laura, he hit a faux flat the other way. Laura ends up getting the item Aron was sent for and catches up with both Hakan and Aron speaking before interjecting to hand Hakan the mysterious message. Hakan gets to acting funny and you can tell he's trying to cover something up about the true meaning of the message and its purpose.
Supposedly, it reveals we believe it reveals the location of the High Council's nest. Only the members of his cult know how to read it.
Yeah, because that's definitely true and not a lie. Hakan deflects by opening up about how his late wife Atsi was a part of the cult of Kukulkan and is the reason why he knows about the message in the first place. After he's done explaining, or lying, whichever one, Laura vows to help Hakan find whatever is at the end of the message. So they meet outside of Paititi with the expectation of heading towards an old village, but Hakan gets caught by guards. One of the guards recognizes who Laura is and explains that Hakan was trying to find something called the Champion's Bow. The guard thinks Hakan wants the bow for the chance to challenge Amaru for the throne, but it's really obvious he just wants to kill him and blames him for everything involving his wife. The guard uses Hakan as leverage to get Laura to do the dirty work for him, and she agrees to get the bow under the circumstances that
If he has so much as a scratch on him when I get back, you all die.
once she's able to get the God Slayer bow from the Slayer's Gauntlet tomb, you come back to find out that boy definitely got a scratch all right. Eventually, Laura's able to catch up with Aron and Hakan to fend off the remaining forces and walk Hakan to his final resting place. And just a side note, I just want to point out that Laura is petty as I don't know what for airing this man out on this man's deathbed.
I'm ashamed of the truth.
What truth? That there never was any hidden cult nest? That you only wanted the God Slayer so you could kill Amaru?
I'd have been on that rock like, you really gonna bring up old stuff? The Price of Survival DLC picks up about 2/3 of the way through the main story. The mission included with this DLC, called The Dragon and the Prince, has Laura meet back up with Koryanka in Unuratu's cave. Only this time we find out she stole a cipher wheel from Amaru. Laura decodes it a bit before her and Kori realize the symbols are related to an area that Amaru and his brother Sairi, the previous king of Paititi, come from. She's told to talk to a man who spent his whole life in Paititi, and once we meet him, he actually enlightens us on the dynamic between Amaru and Sairi since they were young. And looking back, this DLC probably would have been useful before I did the review of the main game. And now that I think about it, after learning that King Sairi, the previous king of Paititi, died and that was his blood brother, makes me wonder if he had a part to play in that. Yeah, we're not gonna talk about that. Anyways, Laura makes it past a heavily guarded entrance and finds out the reason it was so guarded is because it's the entrance to King Sairi's tomb. She finds a key there and uses the wheel to decipher a clue that reveals the next location. Once she makes it there, she finds the chest that the key was meant for, with a document inside revealing that the cipher wheel dealt with the first time Amaru had a run-in with Trinity and his brother's death. Apparently, the village that they come from at the time had been experiencing a famine because of a red fungus that was spreading and infecting the food and land around the village. To fight the famine, Sairi went to go hunt for food, while Amaru was hesitant in dealing with Trinity and the cult of Kukulkan. Sairi ended up dying while out hunting, and Amaru blamed himself for not having devoted himself to the cult sooner to prevent the need for Sairi to even go hunting in the first place. Once she realized how insignificant the wheel is, Laura returns it to Amaru. I'm thinking this DLC takes place right before Amaru reveals himself as the person responsible for Laura's dad's death, because ain't no way I'm finna do the man that had my pops killed a favor. The Grand Caiman DLC is a shorter one, and picks up in San Juan with Jonah talking to Laura about the recent tremors. Since the mudslide caused by the removal of the silver box of Ishel, Trinity began occupying an underground ruin. Abby soon joins the convo and tells them that the ruin belonged to the wrathful god Zipacna, god of mountains and volcanoes. Of course, Laura jumps at the opportunity to investigate the ruins and finds a crustacean-shaped artifact once she gets there. Abby confirms that the removal of this artifact is the reason for the tremors, and to prevent more going forward, the artifact needed to be returned where it belonged. So Laura sets off past the tomb of Zipacna and makes her way to the area where the artifact belonged, only to find out that it was a trap set by Trinity, but obviously a terrible one. She's still able to return the artifact to its rightful place and lets the lovebirds know that the job is done. And finally, the Path Home DLC is very climactic and brings multiple narratives to a close. The Eternal Reward mission starts before the end of the game, where you gotta confront Amaru during the ritual. Abby tells Laura that after she left her and Pilar alone to catch up, referring to the Forge DLC, Pilar gave Abby her grandmother's journals, which is what led her to where she was when you see her. Now, once you beat the game, you come back to find the whole gang discussing the importance of the location they're at. Corey was led there by a trail left behind by the Yashil once they disappeared after the final battle. Abby tells Laura that her grandmother's journals detail a vision with a woman that fits Laura's description. She also says that the tremors mentioned in the Grand Caiman DLC left a fissure that led to a tunnel with a link to the Yashil. Laura's plot armor kicks in as she investigates the tunnel. Once she's able to make it past the guards and through the underground tomb of Shakik, the Mayan goddess who created the key of Ishel and the silver box of Shashel, she confirms that the Yashil have ascended to the next plane of existence now that they've fulfilled their purpose of protecting the artifacts. The DLC ends on a high note with Corey, now freed of her duties to protect Paititi, deciding to explore and serve the nearby areas as her ancestors did. The lovebirds keep on lovebirding, and Corey asks the begging question.
And what about you, Lara? Do you have any plans for the future?
The season pass opens the door on a few side characters that weren't fleshed out in the main story because they weren't as integral to the story, but provide for relationships and character moments worth experiencing as you play the game. Corey was my favorite character during the season pass. She wasn't actually seen in the main story, but she was the one that lifted the gate once you helped Unuratu save Etzli. And what's cool about her is that she's the last of the Shorn Ones, a group of warriors that existed for a long time but was disbanded by Amaru in favor for his priests. She was actually going to leave after that, but like the real one she is, she got word from Unuratu that Etzli was captured and came back to help the rebellion. Once everything is said and done, she decides to follow in her ancestors' footsteps and serve the adopted lands around Paititi. Since her starting point was during the Pillar DLC and her presence was only implied in the main story, I can't really draw too many conclusions on her, but her character as a concept was definitely dope. Abby's story though during the season pass was the complete opposite. In the main story, outside of a few cameos and the initial meet and greet, she doesn't really pop up much, but being able to explore her lineage opened the door for Kwakyaku to have even more personality than it already had. Meeting new characters that knew Abby before the game started helped separate Abby as her own person. Even her relationships with Laura and Jonah grow, and to be quite honest, I wouldn't be mad if she was a part of the crew going forward if they decide to not reboot the next game. This season pass was a major upgrade for her because now she's not only just the love interest for Jonah, she's royalty, and I wonder how she'll juggle her love life with her newfound responsibility as a guardian. Uchu is someone who was featured during the story and has proven himself to be an asset during the hard points. He's usually around when it's time to devise a plan or get active, but outside of a couple favors he asked Laura, Uchu's backstory isn't explored, which is unfortunate because his character design, from the tattoos to the war wounds, definitely suggests a backstory, and fortunately enough, that's what the Nightmare DLC elaborated on. Now, nothing groundbreaking happens with his character, but by the end of his DLC, you know why the scar is a touchy subject. Hakan is definitely who you think he is from the scenes in the main story, and his DLC only reiterates that. From the very moment you enter Paititi, even before you meet Hakan, Etzli mentions that he seems like he's scheming on something, which basically foreshadowed his attempted murder. He snoops around more than he should and ends up in over his head, which is basically the reason we had to save him from the upper city anyways. The Serpents Heart DLC gave details about his tragic backstory, having been the one that murdered his wife because of the cult basically brainwashing her. Even with that info though, I only sympathize with his daughter because the DLC happens a little bit after you save him from capture the first time. The fact that this episode had him getting captured again, but this time dying, just made his character one-dimensional. The tombs across all DLCs, they're all amazing. As I said in the original review, they remain a highlight of the series, and the scenery is amazing. The fact that they were able to stay consistent with ancient Mayan religious concepts while also presenting new items like the white breath and the champion's bow is impressive. Each tomb has a different vibe. The terrain and weather help establish the atmosphere as you run, jump, climb, and tiptoe across extremely dangerous heights and makes each tomb seem distinct. The puzzles in these tombs were challenging as well, way more challenging than any of the ones that that I went through in the main campaign, and they were hard. And what makes this experience even better is that the tombs are co-op, so you can either work with or against a buddy through the tombs, or if you're unable to do co-op, they have point and time-based modes that are ranked arcade style, so you can go up against your friends even if they're not in the tomb with you. Shadow of the Tomb Raider's Season Pass really capitalizes on just about every aspect of DLC that the Rise of the Tomb Raider just didn't even try on, like adding additional story elements that can be enjoyed whether or not you've completed the game. Although I will say this though, I do recommend you play the DLCs as they're presented to you just so that you can get the full experience. They also added additional skills that really just serve as the cherry on top whenever you look at her arsenal or her means of getting resources. Plus new drip that's added with every DLC that comes with their own stat increases as well. The amount of content that comes with each of these 7 DLCs in this season pass is way worth it. Now that I've fully enjoyed this, I'm going to give everything all together an 8 out of 10. It's definitely worth it. If you ever go back to the Tomb Raider series and you decide to play Shadow of the Tomb Raider, I would definitely recommend getting the definitive version. It's a little bit more expensive, but you absolutely get your bang for your buck. And plus, it's only like 30 bucks now. But what do you all think? I know this was a lot to digest, but I'd like to get your opinion on everything that you've seen between each of the DLCs. If you want to rank these based on what you've seen, go right ahead in the comments below. I'm also thinking about editing the cutscenes of these video games into one big movie just so that you can go to the channel and have something to enjoy. And when I do these reviews, a lot of this stuff will make sense. You can have a video that you can reference if anything is confusing. With that being said, guys, if you made it to the end of this video, I appreciate you so much. And I'll catch you guys in the next video.